Now, I don't have a flashlight, so I began sort of frantically searching, trying to put my hands on that little shelter, that little piece of nylon that was my shelter for that evening. Finally, I gave up after a couple of hours of fruitless searching. And I slept underneath a pine tree with a Forest Service map that I had as my blanket. And I had one recurring thought: if only I had my flashlight, I wouldn't be in this predicament. Well, in the morning, dawn finally appeared. I get up, I look around, and there's my tent, maybe 30 feet away. But being close had done me absolutely no good, and it had happened so incredibly fast. And as I was preparing for this meeting, this presentation to you this morning, I thought, and that's exactly the same situation that those of us in organizational life today face as well. Things are changing more rapidly than ever before. Environmental changes, as our previous speaker apprised us, regulatory changes, social changes, global economic trends, all of which impact tax revenue for government. And so this morning, in the brief time that I have to share a few ideas with you, I would like to talk with you about your flashlight. In fact, I want to talk with you about 4 strategies that you can use as an agency leader, as a CEO, as a manager in the government of Dubai, to accelerate the results that you're bringing to your customers and to this government, and to step up your game, to make yourself indispensable, perhaps even to win the prize next year. So what are these 4 strategies? Well, let's take a look. Number 1, I want to encourage each and every one of us to embrace what I will call the opportunity mindset. Now, as you can imagine, doing what I do as an innovation consultant, as speaker, author, I get around a bit. I travel to some 40 countries. I go into organizations large and small, government, corporate, and other types of organizations. And you know, one of the things that I've really become adept at is understanding the culture, understanding what is going on in that organization from the standpoint of the mindset. I'll give you an example, a contrast. Some organizations, you can almost feel it right away. Their attitude, their mindset is, our best days are behind us. Some organizations, on the other hand, some countries, Dubai would be a great example of this, our best days are still ahead of us. Some organizations, they're in denial. Some set of trends or untoward forces are staring them right in the face, and they're going to try to ignore them, hoping that maybe they'll go away. Other organizations embrace change. No matter what those changes are, they give them a big bear hug. Some organizations and the individuals in those organizations make excuses for a lack of results. Other organizations, other individuals in those organizations, they don't give themselves the ability to offer excuses. They say things like, there's no such thing as a truly mature market. There's no such thing as a true commodity product. Everything can be differentiated. Everything can be improved. We're only just beginning. And so, as we think about and focus in this meeting, this conference, on innovation, the quest becomes for the next idea that's going to fuel our growth, fuel our potential. And so I want to ask you a question. Where are the ideas going to come from in your part of this vast government organization? Have you thought much about that? Where are the ideas that are going to come forth? It's a key question, and one source that perhaps we wouldn't normally think about as a source of ideas is happy accidents, right? You're the right person, the right place at the right time, and lightning strikes. MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, did a study of some 50 of the key inventions of the previous century, and they determined that over 30% of them came about largely as a result of an accident, what they call serendipity. One of these would be the microwave oven. Now, the story goes that a gentleman by the name of Percy Spencer, an engineer at Raytheon Corporation, was standing too near a radar transmitter one morning, and the candy bar in his pocket began to melt. Now, Percy had a sense of humor. He said, "Hey," so he sent out for some popcorn, and they put that on the radar transmitter and started popping, and somebody said, "Hey, you know, that could be a consumer product." Well, they just laughed at that, but then they said, "Well, let's try it." And they made it into a new product for the consumer, for the household. And they gave it the name the microwave oven, and they called theirs the radar range. And consumers stayed away in droves. I guess not wanting to have a portable nuclear power plant right there in the kitchen, but eventually that product caught on. It became a breakthrough for for a Raytheon Corporation. Or how about NutraSweet? Perhaps some of you, to sweeten your tea or coffee this morning, used an artificial sweetener. Total happy accident. The man that developed that was actually trying to develop a drug for people with ulcers. Same with Viagra. They were trying to stimulate what they call receptors in the human heart, ended up stimulating receptors elsewhere in the human anatomy, and the rest is history for a company called Pfizer. I don't know if you use Federal Express, but that was a total happy accident company. I once interviewed Fred Smith, the man who founded FedEx back in the early 1970s, and I said, "You know, Fred, what were you looking at when you decided to start this company for parcels, for packages that had to be there overnight, quickly?" And he said, "Well, you know, we were running a family-owned business at the Little Rock, Arkansas airport, refurbishing executive aircraft. But," he said, "with increasing frequency, people were showing up at the airport, trying to charter one of our aircraft to get a package or whatever it was that they needed to get to another city in a hurry." He said, "Finally, it dawned on us that maybe there was a market there that others in that business were totally ignoring. They weren't aware of it." And that's how FedEx came to be. A total happy accident. Well, let me ask you something. Have you had any happy accidents of late in your department, your agency? Well, if you haven't, you might be thinking, well, gee, maybe isn't there another way that we can get toward more of these good ideas, the kind of ideas that win this award, the kind of ideas that really help this organization to succeed? And actually there is. We studied 23 companies. We began to call them innovation vanguard companies, and they were completely reinventing how they go about accomplishing innovation. Now, let me just give you a couple of examples. But before I do, I want to quote a man by the name of Simon Spencer, who was their first innovation champion at a company called BorgWarner, actually based in Chicago in the United States. They make drivetrains for automobiles and other products of that nature. And he said, "You know, Robert, the old BorgWarner would have said you can't organize the innovation process. It's got to be seat of the pants, happy accident, ad hoc, piecemeal." But he said the new BorgWarner says, "Hey, we've got a process for everything else around here. Why not for innovation?" And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the shot that's being heard literally around the world as more and more organizations begin to embrace a more systematic, holistic process so that innovation is something that is part of our DNA. It's not something we do occasionally. It's something that we do all the time. A great example of a company that has really thrived as a result of embracing innovation would be Procter & Gamble. But if you go back 10 years ago, Procter & Gamble was not doing well. They hadn't had a breakthrough product since 1963 when they introduced a shampoo called Head and Shoulders. And they were doing poorly. The stock price was flat, their growth had stalled. This was not a company that we might say was doing a lot of innovating. But with a new leadership, they began to give out rewards for creative ideas. They began to celebrate innovators on their internet site. They began committing to developing markets. And perhaps most important of all, they began conducting annual innovation stretch goals and reviews with their key managers and their key business units. And the results literally speak for themselves. Perhaps their biggest breakthrough was to open up their organization to innovation and to ideas from outside. And today at Procter & Gamble, 50% of the ideas that they utilize, that they profit from, come from outside. A couple of quick examples of this would be the Swiffer mop, if you are familiar with that particular product, or the Crest spin brush. These were ideas that were brought to them from outside the organization, such as from entrepreneurs in the case of spin brush. So, what are these innovation vanguard companies doing? How can we profit from them? How can we learn from them? Let's take a look. Number one, they're making it, as we say, a systematic process. So the constant input, throughput, and output of ideas is what these organizations thrive on. Secondly, they're implementing idea management systems so that no good idea, no matter where it comes from in the organization, gets lost because it doesn't have a place to go. Third, they're collaborating with customers and stakeholders. This is a tremendously, what we might call, productive area of the innovation movement at the current time. We're devising new tools, new methodologies to really get closer and closer in to what our customers' unarticulated needs are, and to thereby partner with customers and other stakeholders. And number four, realizing that you can't put a system or a process, no matter how good, on a culture that is anti-innovation. They're focusing on creating cultures of innovation. And number five, and finally, involving everyone in the enterprise. And you know, this last one here is the one that I often got a lot of comment on. When I would present these ideas, these best practices, various venues, let's say a bank in Rome or Istanbul, or an insurance company in Hong Kong, or direct selling company in Peru, or a mining company in South Africa, or a Silicon Valley technology company, I'd often have the CEO or the leader of that organization pull me aside and say, you know, none of these best practices that you talk about, Robert, are easy. But this fifth one, we struggle with that. And I would ask, well, why is that? And they would say, well, you know, first of all, we've got great people here. They've got great functional skills, they've got great technical skills, they've got great people skills. But what we lack are, and here they would hesitate, what we lack, they would say, are innovation skills. And people in this organization don't step forward. They would say to me, you know, they wait for me to tell them what I want them to do. And so we began to think about this, and as a result of that, we wrote this new book called Innovation is Everybody's Business, where we went out and talked to 43 people, like many of you in this room today, who are coming up with ideas and bringing those ideas to life to solve real-world problems, to solve real-world challenges. And we simply interviewed you and asked you a battery of questions about how you are able to be effective, and we boiled it down to what we call 7 I skills. Hey, we figured there's the iPod, the iPhone, the I this, the I that. Why not have I skills for this new era? And we got it down to 7, and I will be sharing